All righty, my computer now says it is 6 p.m., so I will call the meeting to order of the FinCom by doing a roll call. We are recording, is that correct? Yes, I see we're recording. Okay. I see that Russ is also recording, so we'll have two if we need it. Let me start by going with Jocelyn. She's not here. And Emily, she's not here. I knew that, and I'll explain it in a minute. Michelle
I'm here.
and Stan. You there, Stan? You got yourself muted. I see your name. Can you come on board, Stan, please? And Dick Trussell.
Okay, I made it. I made it on board.
Good, Stan. Now, I want to thank Stan and Michelle, and I want to explain to the general public, this was a very short notice meeting, and that is why Emily and Jocelyn are not here. But we did need a quorum in order to present the information. This is a familiarization type meeting. And since we have a quorum and it's recorded, Emily and Jocelyn will look at SLC TV or whatever it is over the weekend to be ready for the Monday meeting. Now, what Monday meeting is that? That's a combined meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to 99% finalize the budget before the warrants are due on the 29th. So it was very important that the three items that are listed on our agenda be known to the members so that they can react accordingly. I want to thank Michelle and Stan for going out of their way to be available tonight. Try not to come up with short notice meetings, but this was necessary. All right, we have a guest tonight, of course, which is Kate. And Kate, why don't I turn it over to you so that you can go into the free cash review that we discussed. Are you there, Kate?
I'm here. Yep.
Okay. I don't know how to. Russ, may I ask Russ Williston, how do we get your picture off of our screen? Not that you aren't.
Is my picture on your screen? I don't know that I'm doing anything to do that.
I don't know. It says Russ Williston is recording this call for note-taking purposes, and that's okay. But you are dominating our screen.
I think as soon as you share something else or someone turns their video on, you'll see that instead.
All right. Okay, Kate, let me turn it over to you, if I may.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen, and I know, so Cheryl Garapi is also obviously on the call, and she and I worked on a PowerPoint that I hope is pretty brief. And so she and I are going to be sharing that responsibility this evening. Let me know. Okay.
Yes, we see it.
Yep. Okay, great. So I'm going to just give a brief overview, although I'm sure you all know the nuances of free cash, but just in case somebody wants to rewatch this. So free cash is defined as unrestricted funds available for appropriation, and these funds can be appropriated by a majority vote of a city or town's legislative body. They are certified as of July 1st and are based on the July 30th balance sheet, which reflects the operational results for the prior fiscal year. Free cash cannot be appropriated until it's been certified by the Bureau of Accounts per the Massachusetts general law. and any unappropriated balance expires July 30th of that fiscal year. The Bureau will only certify amounts of free cash that are not designated for another purpose or already spent, and the certified amount represents cash in hand as of June 30th. It also includes certain verified outstanding revenues received within 90 days of the close of the fiscal year. And that actually reduces the amount of any account deficits, with the exception of snow and ice, court judgments, and overlay or emergencies, because those are exempt from it. Free cash is further reduced by the real and personal property receivables that are not deferred and cash and certain outstanding receivable variances. Cities, towns, and districts that request free cash certification are required to submit documentation to the Bureau of Accounts in order for the Bureau to accurately calculate the community's free cash. And these submissions are somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 11 pages, depending on how much data is there. As of last year, and again this year, they will make up one part of the appendix in the budget book. And so they include the standardized combined balance sheet template, which is the related fund balance, the receivable details, and the subsequent receipts. The system generated general fund trial balance, which is used to just verify the balances in the general fund, basically all on one combined sheet. And then the system generated undesignated fund balance detail report. And we'll get into sort of what constitutes a fund balance. And certified free cash, just for the record, is a critical component of the financial reserves for any community. And so the state starts these certifications in and around September of each year. And since there's 351 cities and towns, it takes a lot of time, mostly the entirety of the year. And we are almost never first. And the state goes in order of each community's town meeting. So since our town meeting is in May, we make up pretty much, we're in early May, first week of May, we make up somewhere around the middle of when we have the certifications back from the state. Free cash availability can impact the community's financial health. And we talked about this in great detail during last year's budget process. The retaining of free cash provides municipalities with financial flexibility during capital planning. And cash balances may negatively impact a community's bond credit rating. The spreadsheet on the slide here is a copy of what Lancaster submitted to the Division of Local Services as part of our free cash certification. Using free cash to support the current year operations may lead to a structural budget deficit and could risk future spending plans. Free cash, by definition, is a result of positive budgetary variances, and these occur when free cash certified is higher than free cash appropriated, meaning our actual revenues received are greater than the revenues estimated in the budget. Our budgeted expenditures are greater than the actual, or our budgeted expenditures are less than the actual expenditures or encumbrances, and outstanding property taxes at the prior year's end are greater than the outstanding property taxes as of the current year's end. So the basic formula or steps are seen here on the right side, and we start with the undesignated fund balance, we subtract the accounts receivable, we subtract any of the deficits, and then add in the deferred revenue, and that amount is what equals free cash. So accounts receivable refers to the revenues that are due to a community but have not yet been received. Receivables are deducted from the undesignated fund balance only if they meet one of two conditions. First, that the revenue is not fully deferred in a liability section of the balance sheet given to the state at the time of certification, or if the revenue is not received by the September 30th cutoff date of the next year. So Massachusetts doesn't allow municipalities to spend in excess of the appropriations, except in certain situations, which I already talked about, snow and ice, etc. And that ultimately ends up making free cash. So it's really like a checkbook of sorts. Money comes in as you're paid weekly or biweekly, and then the following weeks or month you pay the bills associated with living costs, etc. Cheryl's going to get into that a little bit later on her slides. Another factor is that the real and personal property tax revenues are partially deferred until they're collected. So these revenues are only recognized once they're received. And for this reason, real estate and personal property deferred revenues have to be added back into the undesignated fund balance. So additionally, the state does not allow us to budget or use any revenue estimates which are above what we had in the prior year. So even if the town were to believe, say, this coming year in FY25 that we were going to get, say, additional $300,000 in revenue because we know a large complex is being built, or there's, a guarantee, quote unquote, of a raise in Chapter 90, we can't account for that until we've received it as cash in hand. And that's because the state really can't guarantee the local aid dollars or the cherry sheet estimates until they have an approved budget. And oftentimes that approved budget comes after the towns are able to approve theirs. So the Technical Assistance Bureau, which is the bureau that also participates in free cash and bond ratings, recommends that communities understand the role that free cash plays in sustaining a strong credit rating, and encourages towns to adopt policies for its use. I know that we've been working on a policy usually since right around the start of the fiscal year here. And, likely we'll get back to it after the budget. But under sound financial policies, a community strives to generate free cash in an amount that is equal to 3 to 5% of its annual budget. So on a $27 million budget in Lancaster, that's an annual goal of between $810 to $1.35 million. So for fiscal year 24, we were hoping that amount would come back, that we would be able to apply to the FY25 budget such that we would be able to cover the first bond payment for the high school. Having a goal like that as the community is in line with the Department of Revenue and other federal and state best practices, and assures that Lancaster is able to deter free cash from being depleted in any particular year. It also enables the following year calculation to begin on a positive balance. So in order to do this, we orchestrate a very conservative revenue projection and structure the department appropriations such that we have a potential to produce excess income, both from increased program offerings or changes in fees mid-year, and also for now what we've been doing is combining staff positions. So both the DOR and the DLS have policies for communities, which in short, and I'll read it in quote, as a non-reoccurring revenue source, free cash should be restricted to paying one-time expenditures, funding capital projects, or replenishing reserves. If a community incorporates free cash into revenue source projections for the next year's operational expenses, it's likely to lead to a deficit in future years. The tax collected must be at or equal to the cost of doing business. This is the main point that we spoke about last year relative to the override. So overall, the state recommends communities avoid supplementing their current year operations with free cash. And any free cash use requires the appropriation of the recommendation of town meeting, but only after it's been certified. So as I can show you later, once Cheryl is done, this year's budget contemplates the first article will be the allocation of free cash back into the general fund in order to appropriate that to pay the school debt. The amount left on free cash also depends heavily on what we have left for outstanding bills, liabilities, and assessments. So we have to provide initial data for the following year's budget before we even have an audit back on the year prior to that. So at any given time, we are in 3 fiscal years in terms of planning. The state reimbursements don't come out until the end of the first year, and oftentimes they're so late that our warrant has closed. So again, the Schedule A and the balance sheet, which are required for the free cash, are due by October 31st of each year. Then the tax rate is usually set typically in November. Then we have the holidays. And as we said on an earlier slide, then the DOR takes the town certifications in order of their town meetings. So any community with a town meeting prior to ours, which is the first week in May, has their certification process before ours. So this is a very long slide, but I'm planning on putting this online so people can read it. But essentially, this is the Massachusetts general law regarding our municipal growth factor. So the most recent 3 years of new growth are averaged in terms of the percentage increase and accounted for in the previous year's limit. And the maximum of these percentages is compared to the average of the other two. And if the difference exceeds 2 percentage points, then the maximum is considered to represent an aberration. And in this case, the lowest 3 years out of the most recent 4 years are used to estimate the rate of new growth for the increase. I understand that that is as clear as mud. Cheryl and I were talking today anecdotally, and I said, you know how they have that provision, those who don't teach? I'm fully aware that I could never teach this course because while I took it in school and went through it, it really wasn't until I started doing it that I fully understood. Okay, I'm handing it over to Cheryl.
Thank you. This sheet, I put up more for just as an interesting fact. I put, excuse me, all your fund balances since they're recorded with the DOR, but they started back in 2002. And from that, I show all the outstanding real estate and personal property that's deducted from that prior to your free cash amount. So here you can see what your fund balance actually is and what they're saying you can have to use for certified free cash. The last column is what you use, you've appropriated towards the budget mostly in capital expenses. And as you can see, you know, we've been very good about not using the total of your free cash certification, which is a good thing. Kate put this together, so I can't really tell you too much other than
this is sorry, this was out of order and I don't know why the other one was supposed to come first, but I just really wanted to show that these were our revenue projections for the last few budget years. And as you can see, it's a bit all over the map, although the number between, 1.8 and 2.06 isn't a huge range. The idea of what we get as far as revenue projections to actuals, has fluctuated such that in some years it's several $100,000 difference. And so while, again, going back to what I said previously, we'd love to assume that everything that we expect to happen will come to fruition and that the promises that are made or the earmarks that are done will come to fruition at the state level. That isn't always the case. How come sorry. Give me a second because I have two up here and I don't know why. Okay. Cheryl, were you expecting this one next?
yes.
Okay.
So this is a copy of what was submitted to get our free cash certified. The first page that Kate showed earlier was your fund balance from the previous year. And this one begins with the fund balance as of June 30, 2023. So we start with the fund balance of I can't read, that's so small. 39, I think it is. And then we take out the outstanding receivables of real and personal property. Then we deduct all the deficit balances in our special revenue accounts. You add back in your deferred receivables, and that gives you your free cash. And at this point, I like to say I did go back and listen to the joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen. And I think, as you all know, I hate public speaking. And I did hear myself in that meeting start with, we had 1.3 in free cash, which was really the 1.2 from fiscal 22. I expected to close another 400. And by the time it was said and done, I said I expected a 1.3 free cash. That was my nerves. I had meant to say, if I started with 1.2 and I'm adding to it, I meant to say 2.3. So that is my mistake. And the next one. This again is just to show our cash flow for people that are interested. And it's cyclical, as you can see. July, we bring in the money from the bills that were sent out that are going to be due August 1st. August comes and the school takes it away. And this repeats every quarter. So on average, we have around $2 million available in cash to earn interest. And it does earn interest. Our treasurer just negotiated a rate with the bank of 4.25%. So that's pretty good. last year we collected 59,000 for the whole year for our general fund cash, and this year we're already at 75,000.
So the last thing that I wanted to share was the I guess aggregate page in the budget book, which I need to find. Here it is. Can you see that?
You can't make it any bigger?
Um,
Although
Not
maybe
that-
other people can see it fine. That's
well,
better. That's better.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Now we can.
Sorry. So the one thing that I want to focus on here is right here. So when folks are questioning, when do we get that money back? This is the money that we're looking through town meeting to appropriate back in order to pay this amount, which is a lump sum, although in the budget book, it goes more in depth as to the regular assessment from Neshoba, plus the new debt, and then capital. So we've split it out this year. We did the same thing with Minuteman. And so the capital for the debt is 891,369. And so that's the way that we were able to sort of put it back in an effort not to impact the tax total for folks. And so when all was said and done, it ends up being somewhere in the neighborhood of about 35 cents or something to the average household for the difference between last year's budget and this year's. Without this, you would have most certainly seen, a fairly sizable, depending on the size of your home, increase from the override. And I guess there's been a lot of people talking about free cash, and what I can say unequivocally is that we're actually in a good position. And I understand that when people are saying, but we've spent we were charged $1.2 million more than we were supposed to. That's a forever, whereas free cash is not forever. And so the idea of having us being able to catch up with our inflation, this actually is showing that plan is now coming to fruition, because the idea was to stabilize our general fund such that we are able to not only keep up with the increases for the school, but like I said, also try to defer some of the payment. And in this year, we were able to defer 100% of the payment, providing the article passes. And I think that's very sound financial planning, and I appreciate the select board and the finance committee and sort of entertaining that with Cheryl and I. So that's what we have.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Are you turning it back to me now? Is that it?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge that my board chair is here as well, and just didn't know if he had anything to say, and maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, no. Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
How are you? Thank you for indulging me. I'm glad Kate and Cheryl did this presentation, because I think it's a fantastic clarification for folks about what free cash is and what the impact is. And I just think it's important to note for the record, of course, that this budget does include that first payment for the high school debt, and that it's at a lower cost than probably like about 50 cents on the average taxpayer, with a home valued somewhere in the 470 range. Now, of course, if the home values changed, that's fine, but it's a pretty good circumstance for us to be in, and very sound budgeting. And I'm grateful for the work that Cheryl and Kate did on last year's budget as well as on this year's budget. We're really seeing professionalized budgeting that we haven't seen in a very long time here in the town of Lancaster. So thank you for hosting Kate and Cheryl and letting me butt in ever so briefly in your meeting.
Okay. Well,
you.
thank you for coming forward. I want to say to the people who are online, first of all, thank you for coming. Second of all, how do I want to put this? There were three topics tonight. If you have a question, not a statement, a question about what has been presented, I will recognize you one time. So select what category it is that you want to be recognized. I'm not sure you'll get an answer, but at least you'll be able to ask your question. Let me move on now. Now, Kate, I didn't know your background was so much into arborism or arbor. How do you say the word?
Oh, that was a long time ago, but yes, how'd you know that?
All right. However, would you like to explain item number 2, or would you like me to do it as far as the forest land is concerned?
I absolutely defer to you, Mr. Chair. You have had many more conversations, although I will say anecdotally that I think it's wonderful.
Okay.
From one tree hugger to another.
Okay. I am going to simplify the explanation because on Monday night, there will be a full presentation by Janet Morrison, who will be in charge of all this. So if you have questions on this, maybe you want to hold them until Monday night. Basically, and I guess it was back during the Trump era, there was something called the Clean River Act, the Wild and Scenic River Act. And finally this year, the Neshoba River Watershed Group has selected Lancaster as one of 9 towns in the state of Massachusetts eligible for a funding from the federal government. The monies will come from the federal government. Guess what? It's our money anyhow, but now we're going to get it back. What happens there is the funding, in order to get that funding, we must first fund it ourselves. And that will come up in the next budget session. But now what is this all about? There are 5 different locations in Lancaster that will receive permanent deeded conservation, no building, open space certification. However, if it's open space and they decide to build a barn or something, they can ask permission to do that if they plan to use the land. What's happening is the owners are selling or basically giving up their developmental rights for an amount of cash. And that cash will be coming from the federal government in the long run, not from us. I have checked, and none of these locations are industrial. So we are not taking away any potential income from the town. The town will derive no dollar benefit from this, no new monies for, quote, sale of land. However, we will not incur any costs either. Well, other than initially, because it'll be refunded to us. Not in the same year that it's spent, though. So we need to consider that we are getting a total of 648 acres put aside as conservation, basically as conservation land, and that includes our own part for our own town forest. That's some of the land also. And it will cost us, as far as this government grant is concerned, 0. However, there will be a charge for the management of this, and that is being covered by CPA, which is meeting right now. And in the CPA, I'm sure no one has gone done this except someone stupid such as myself. 40% of it has been paid by the state. That's what happened 2 years ago with the money. So basically, we are going to spend about $15,000 to $20,000 to get 648 acres under conservation. I will ask if there's anyone who understands it any differently than that, or has a question about what I just said, because it was convoluted too. Is there anything you'd like to add, Kate? I mean, you know it, so, or Cheryl?
No, only that the request, and maybe you're getting to the request, but the request was for $125,000 in FY 25.
I figured we'd bring that up
Oh.
next, the amount, as we discuss the revisions to the budget and the 125,000 for Memorial School, et cetera.
Got it.
So that it would flow. However, I will say we need to get $125,000 out front to do this project. That's the amount that will be reimbursed to us. Where are we going to get the $125,000? Well, in the preliminary capital budget, we set aside $125,000 for a feasibility study for Memorial School. I have, and some others, in my own mind, I've decided that it would be silly to spend $125,000 right now for a feasibility study, be told what to do, and then not have any town money to do anything. So why are we spending $125,000 to get something that will sit on the shelf? As opposed to, we could spend $125,000 for the forest grant, get 640 acres under permanent conservation, and get $125,000 back. So that is the simplest background information. Does that make any sense, everybody? Is there anyone with a question on that? Not seeing any hands. I will move on. Stan or Michelle, is there anything you wish to say about this at this point?
No, that was well explained, Dick. As far as I'm concerned, that was very well explained. And it makes perfect sense.
Okay, I didn't even understand what I was saying, but thank you for that being well explained.
No, that makes two of us.
No, I did understand, and I hope I did not mess it up too much. All right, let us move on to the third topic for tonight, and that is certain revisions within the capital budget, which for all intents and purposes will be finalized Monday night at the combined meeting with the Board of Selectmen. The reason for this is, and discussion has already taken place, we must assign the ARPA money by December of this year, and we must spend it by December of the following year. It seems the Memorial School was going to be ARPA money. However, if we use the ARPA money for the forest grant, and it must be spent, we did not really, there's a question whether we would have spent it as opposed to used it, because we would be refunded. So was it actually spent? To avoid any question with that, because ARPA will take it back if we don't spend it, we're going to reassign the funding portion of the capital budget. Kate, may I turn it over to you now for that explanation, now that I've probably taken up all of what you wanted to say? I apologize.
No. So
okay, did you find that $30,000 we talked about for the facilities administration?
Yes. So
Okay.
yeah.
I see it in there. Okay, and it is funded. All right.
So this would be, I guess, draft B, So this is, again, the select board and the finance committee will have to officially discuss and make a determination on the memorial school project. I did bring it up at the last select board meeting, just to kind of allow it to marinate a little bit for folks. So I know that that's going to come up in conversation. So this supposes B here that is removed, and so we would be reallocating. So if I go up here, sorry if that you scroll and it makes people sick. I understand that, but so here you can see this green other exterior. This has it redeposited back in, so it's reappropriated instead of red is encumbered. So reappropriated, so that it's available. And then down here, there's a corresponding Forest Legacy grant program here, where it's urgent to expand. And so that's G, which is general fund, versus the A for ARPA. And so the numbers are relatively similar, although the 125,000 was contemplated to be spent before the end of this, or at least committed before the end of this fiscal year. And so effectively, we're taking it and we're reallocating it to these several programs. And so what we come up with is a capital plan of 1.4 million, of which 829,300 is ARPA, and that would be the remaining. And so again, as you said, Dick, it must be obligated by the end of the calendar year, and then spent. Oh, that's a typo. I'm going to fix that. By the following. I don't. Do you want me to keep this up? I'm not sure if it's helpful or too much on the screen.
I'm going to ask outright right now, and let me call up my list of participants. I don't see. I will take. We've finished the 3 items that I wanted discussed and available for discussion before the Monday night meeting. So I will take, and I want to explain it first, a question from a singular question, a singular financial question about what has been presented tonight. But I want to hear your hopes and dreams. I need to explain to you my understanding, and Kate, you or Cheryl, you can. My dealings with the state have informed me that the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen are responsible for presenting the budget. The Finance Committee will present it to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen will approve or adjust it. The residents get to discuss and, well, let's just say discuss the budget by asking questions written and not necessarily at a meeting, or making amendments at the May 6th meeting. And then the residents get to vote on it. What is presented to you is the thoughts, wishes, and best understandings of the 2 committees. Now, if you have questions or you have anything you want to add, put it in writing, or I will right now on tonight's subject only, except 1 question per person. Is there anyone who would like to raise their hand? Okay, first of all, I see, and I'm not good at this, so someone help me out. I see
Ralph Gifford.
Ralph Gifford first. You're on, Ralph, for 2 minutes. That's it.
Thank you, Dick, and thank you.
I have no way of keeping track, so I'm just going to think of it. 2 minutes.
I'll be quick. I'm always brief. Thank you for the presentations. My question pertains to the proposed use of the free cash. And it was my understanding that from the presentation that we're talking about using it to reduce debt for the Neshoba. And I'm trying to get my hand around it a little bit more. How much free cash towards that? And this is a capital expense reduction? That wasn't entirely clear to me. So my question, I'm trying to better understand the use of the free cash for the Neshoba debt.
I'll try and get into that a little bit. And then you can take it after that, Kate and Cheryl. This year we owe right now, $717,000 on the first bond of $28,930,000. I've spread that out. I don't know if you want to put it up, Cheryl, but on my analysis. And then randomly, and I want it known as randomly, selected the next two bonds and what would they do as far as each year what they needed. In the second year, you'll have to go down to the bottom, I think, of page 2. Okay, in the first year, we have the $717,000. That's this year, fiscal 2025. Fiscal 2026, by adding in the others, we need $2,864,000. We currently have $2,679,000 in free cash. It won't stay there, but that's what we're going to owe. Now, after that, it goes to $3,600,000 and then $3,500,000. Now, I realize that the interest rate may change, our debt percentage may change, the bond that they actually take may change, and the dates may change. But we needed to see a worst case scenario. And so I took from the 100, if you go to the top, very top, please. All right, there's an original cost estimate and adjusted cost estimate. And then there's original state contribution and adjusted in the date when it was adjusted. So that netted out the towns needed $176,900. After the adjustment, we need $161,982. Up there you go. Of which we have taken $28,930,000 bond number one amount, which leaves us, go all the way to the bottom if you would. I'll keep going. Okay, the second amount, and these are factored. Factored is not an accurate way to do things. It's an indication of things. But it's not a bad way to get a indication of what may happen. So I said they would do 90,000 as the primary, 90 million as a primary building, and 43 million as the third bond, as a cleanup bond. Now, it could be 50, 50, and 33. It could be anything. And it could be more than 3 bonds. But I just used 3 bonds. That's what had been discussed. And you can see the result there. So the question is, why is I think you were asking, what is free cash being targeted for? To help against the $2,674,000 that's a year away in our fiscal planning. Kate, is there anything you would like to add or correct on that? I don't know if, Kate, you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute. No, Dick. I mean, I think the numbers that came out from Neshoba had an assessment of 15.7 million and then had the excluded debt at 814,142. So we were carrying a number a little bit larger than what came out on the initial bond debt form. Frankly, just as a belt and suspenders type of thing, but yeah.
Well, it is a guesstimate. It is, don't anyone take what I did as definitive. It is simply to show what might happen under certain circumstances and how much it would cost us and what should we be prepared for down the road. I'm tired of fingering the dike financing around here. Let's plan and plan ahead. That's my point.
Thank you.
All right, I hope I answered that for you. Maybe not satisfactory, but
It certainly was helpful. Thank you.
okay. Next is Roy Rizak.
Yes, thank you, Dick. And Kate and Dick, thank you for holding this meeting and thank you for sharing the information. All right. Question, and forgive me if I couldn't capture all of the figures going past, as quickly as you needed to get the information across. But roughly, we have 2.7 million in free cash. Of that, let's say we're going to say 5% as per the Department of Revenue guidelines for a recommended reserve. That leaves about 1.35, which the town could prudently allocate to other expenses. You're proposing, and if I get the correlation correct, Kate, you proposed about 820,000 or so for this year's high school expense. Dick, you're estimating about 717,000. So somewhere in there, but that leaves somewhere in the order of 500 to 600,000 dollars of free cash that's still available that I haven't heard what the plan is for that, or are we planning to return that to the taxpayers?
Let me first tell you, Roy, that 717,000 versus the 800. 717 is new school only. 800 includes the ongoing school debt.
Okay.
So they're two different figures.
All right.
Don't confuse the total debt with the just school owner debt.
Thank you for clarifying the confusion. Okay.
All right, Kate, as far as the difference on the 500,000, is anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, forgive me, but I think you sort of just answered that in that we're trying to gear up so that when we get to a point where our payment is in the couple million, that we're able to use it rather than, because if you use it now, Roy, say we were to roll 500,000 in, you would ultimately end up likely needing to raise the tax rate significantly in order to pay off a $2.5 to $3 million bill in 1 year. So it would be akin to knowing that, well, like we do with capital, right? And it by the way, it isn't capital. Capital would be a different category. This is excluded debt. So it would be like knowing that you're buying a car and maybe you would own the car for 10 years, 15 years, but as your car is getting older, you might be squirreling away a few thousand every year. So you don't have to take out a huge loan.
Okay, to make sure I understand then, what the town is recommending is that you want to hold the 500,000 approximately for the future step increase that we're going to see in the school debt expense. And you're doing that to lessen the sudden step up in taxes, that type of thing. But the town wants to hold that money at this point in time. Is that correct?
And earn interest on it and make it easier on people when we jump from $700,000 to $2.5 million.
I think, Roy, what you are likely going to see, although Cheryl and I have to work through this, depending on what happens on Monday, is an article to move the remainder into a stabilization account for the debt so that it's there for that reason. And then there would be a corresponding request to appropriate that at a subsequent town meeting when the bill comes due. Which is sort of in line with, I know that I talked fast and I apologize. I was trying not to take a year of everybody's time. But it was sort of what I was talking about the DOR saying that cash is either the one time or used to repopulate. And the number just that you said when it's talking about 5%, that's annually, that's not in total. But the idea is that you would have somewhere in under $1 million or so of a $27 million budget that you would have as free cash, all told, that then small towns either apply it totally to capital or to debt or some variation therein. So remember, when we get to years like next year, when we're done appropriating ARPA, if we don't have money for the ability to do capital projects, we can't do any. And that is the reason why the old town hall is in disarray. And I think that the town wouldn't be keen on borrowing that money because we're already paying off a very large bill up the road. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but it just.
Also, Roy, in the capital budget, I think I'm saying this right, Kate. We took out the stabilization or the reserve fund for the senior group of $100,000. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
So we actually have reduced that capital, that by doing that, we reduced that also. So everything needs to be looked at, and we're trying to spend only that which is necessary or makes sense because it returns us a better investment. Anything else, Kate?
No, not for me.
Okay. Next is Russ Williston. Russ, hey, we've got your picture up, so go, Russ.
Thank you, Dick. Yeah, so I am curious if a budget to actual spreadsheet or report could be presented to the town. My concern is that the FY 2023 budget actually showed a $700,000 plus deficit that was going to be closed with free cash, and in reality, in the end of the year, there was an extra $1.6 million in free cash on the balance sheet.
No,
and
there was
that's really
763, not 1 million.
That's the deficit?
No, there wasn't a deficit. It was under budget by 763.
The FY 2023 budget
Correct.
showed that there was a deficit that was going to be paid with free cash.
That's because it includes free cash transfers or transfers out to capital in the total. Those have to be backed out prior to coming with a total for the year to date.
So I saw those on the tax recap, but those were separate things that were approved later in the town meeting, is my understanding. Well, regardless, I mean, I'm curious where this
I can absolutely
surplus came from. Yeah, because I think people's question is going to be if the FY 2024 budget was a substantial increase on the FY 23 budget, and there was this much of a surplus at the end of FY 2023.
But it wasn't known. It wasn't known, Russ. That's the problem with
Can
the
I just-
dating of 3 years difference.
Sorry, that year is an anomaly, and I'll tell you why. And because I think somebody, I don't believe it was you, Russ, but somebody asked that very question, and it's insightful. When we were going into the override, we didn't fill positions that became vacant because what we didn't want is if the override didn't pass, we didn't want to have to lay those people off and then have the corresponding payments for unemployment, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So we had DPW had somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.5 open positions. I say half because it was half a year. The library had 2 open positions, and there was a few at the town hall, and then the police lieutenant position that had initially been budgeted but then backed out. So I don't expect, I don't think it was $1 million though. I think it was closer to the 750 to 800,000, but I don't expect to see that again. Again, that was an anomaly because we weren't filling positions. That isn't the entirety of it. It's not 100%, but it's a very big contributing factor. And so there was also a corresponding reduction then in health insurance and the liability insurance.
Yeah, if that's the case, I think that people would see that if it's on this budget to actual sheet. I think people would like to see where the surplus arose from, whether, like you said, it was more revenue or lower expenses, positions that weren't filled, but that should all be pretty plain when people see that. And I'd like to see that
It's all in the
before
budget
town
book.
meeting. It's not. Yeah, it's the budget to actual for 2023
not
is not.
laid out the way you want it, Russ. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But if you take all the actuals from each page and add them up,
Oh, come on.
I don't think
Well,
I don't think actuals for FY23 are in the
Steve?
budget book. At least last time I looked.
yes,
Um,
they
in the
are.
present-
Each page has the actual.
Point of order.
Point of order by whom?
Well, you guys asked for just questions and not necessarily discussion.
Well, I'm willing to discuss it, Kendra, as long as it is pertinent to what has already been presented.
Yeah.
We won't do it until 12 o'clock at night, I can assure you that.
Can
We're
I just,
almost done now.
I'm wondering if I can just, like, let's take cemetery, for example. This, now I understand having to go through, so let us see if we can put a few things together, we can maybe put it in the appendix, but is this what, have you seen this, Russ? This is the actuals?
I don't even know if I need to see it I mean, it's great, but like Dick says, it's going to take a while to add up. Even just, I mean, the summary budget that we look at town meeting that has, I don't know, maybe 20 lines on it. If you could show where the difference was within that budget,
I
I
can,
think
but
that would be helpful.
could I say something, please?
Absolutely.
I think we're getting confused with the budget and free cash. What goes to free cash is the total amount of expenditures. Doesn't have anything to do with the budget. The total expenditures taken away from the total revenues received. That's what applies to your free cash. And the difference this year was 715,000. So your revenues very much play into this, not your budget.
Yeah, no, if we realize that much extra revenue, yeah, just so I mean, I can wrap up my question, Dick. It was just if we could see a summary budget that shows where this difference was in FY23.
I agree 100% with you, Russ, and it's almost completed because I'm doing it myself.
Okay,
I will be glad to
perfect.
share it with you when I'm done.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. I see Kendra Dickinson. Kendra, 2 minutes. Don't I wish? Here we go.
Oh, geez, I'm not even going to make it that long, kind sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So my question is, from what I understand is, and forgive me for lack of a better comparison, the town's not trying to max out its credit card in terms of free cash. It's trying to keep a balance that can be flexible, help handle the next bond payment. And you guys really aren't asking for a significant increase. It's 35 cents. And to build on that, I would welcome anybody who wants to be so critical of your work to apply for a job or volunteer for a position.
Thank you. I would like to point out that Kate said at the last meeting, last Board of Selectmen meeting, that this is also a year we'll probably be rated again by Moody's and for this bond. So to have a sizable free cash will not hurt us in any way. In fact, it'll help us. Is that a correct statement, Kate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I do not see any other
Mr.
hands
Chairman,
at this time. Is there anyone else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
may I ask, this is Stan, a common question?
sure.
Kate probably has it, or Cheryl, whatever. What interest rate are we receiving on our stabilization fund currently?
I don't know on the stabilization, Stan. I didn't ask Marcia today.
I mean, any ballpark idea? Are we in the fours?
Honestly, I don't know.
Oh,
No, I would think it would be higher if we're 4.5 at a local bank. I'm sure it's higher. Those are all invested funds.
okay. And does snow and ice play any role? I know it's usually budgeted low. This year probably was right in budget. If not, we saved some. Is that factual this year in terms of the cost of snow and ice in a very
Yes,
warm
we
year?
did. Yes.
Although for the record, because Cheryl and I went round and round because this was before the override, but the savings that we get from snow and ice, we're not allowed to under budget that from year to year. Am I explaining that correctly, Cheryl?
Yes, you
So
can't-
if
you
we
can
realize
never-
a savings of 50,000, we still have to budget the same the following year. Because
Yes.
communities were doing that, and then that is the one fund that you can overspend. But then it creates this havoc in getting your budget numbers and your tax rate certified because you have this illegal balance. So they don't let you do that.
How much did we save this year? Just to kind of follow up with Russ's conversation, where the money came from.
Stand by.
Yeah, how much did we save on snow and ice this year?
Let me just look that up here.
When you say this year, do you mean the year we're just
Fiscal year
finishing?
24.
I don't know the number for 24 yet, but I know they haven't exceeded their budget.
Their actuals in 23 were 254,925. And we budgeted a level fund the last couple years.
And the expenditures year to date?
For this year or for last?
Yeah, for this year. I declare no more snow coming this year.
I don't know the answer to that, but we can certainly get it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Michelle, is there anything you wish to ask?
Nope, I don't have any questions at the moment. You guys have been doing a fantastic job.
Okay, thank you. Deb Duramo, did you have a question or not? Did I miss you, Deb, or not?
No, I'm good, Dick.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is and it's a statement, not a question. I would like to see budget to actuals on a periodic basis, and I'm happy to hear you're working on that.
Generally you have it. You just don't have it in 23. But generally you have budgets out in the budget book. And we'll make sure that happens, I believe, year to year. All righty. Is there any question from anyone else? If not, I'm going to close that portion of it and move on to, first of all, thanking Kate and Cheryl for tremendous work on getting this. This is the kind of information we needed, I believe. I think it helps everybody understand better, and I think it shows that we are, as a town, our people as a town are dedicated to making us not only fiscally solvent, but fiscally responsible. And I thank them very much for what they did tonight. And I would urge everyone who's here to show up Monday night for the Board of Selectmen meeting. That I'll have nothing to do with that, but you'll hear everything going on about the budget if you have a concern. All right, is there any? I'm going to avoid new business, Cheryl, as far as next meetings, because we don't have a full complement of people here. So I'll do that on an individual basis and schedule the next meeting after that. And then we'll make a yearly schedule in the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Before you go further, I just looked it up. Our budget for snow and ice for this year is 251,054, and we have spent 125,786.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. You know, there are simple things like that, but they add up. That's a big thing. But for instance, even on veterans, we get back 75 cents on every dollar spent in benefits. Is that correct? So you have a built-in addition to free cash in some of these things, or a potential for loss too. I understand that. All righty. Having no more questions and no more statements, I will, from either Michelle or Stan, accept a recommendation to end the meeting.
Ladies first, Michelle.
I will make a motion to close the meeting.
I second.
No discussion. Let's take a vote. Michelle,
Aye.
Stan,
Aye.
and Dick. Yes, thank you all for coming. I appreciate your questions, and I hope we were helpful to you tonight.